Since its inception in 1975, the Cricket World Cup has been the ICC's largest celebration of cricket and its primary showcase of the sport's global reach. Every 4 years, billions stop to take note of the ICC's flagship event and watch as the world's best teams compete to decide the world champion. It certainly didn't start as a behemoth, however. The first World Cup consisted of only 15 matches contested between 8 teams, met with relatively subdued support from players, media and supporters. But indeed, as the World Cup started to grow larger and larger throughout the 90s and 2000s, the amount of participants too increased. This reflected cricket's expansion into new markets and the ICC's commitment to giving cricket's smaller nations a chance in the spotlight. Between 1975 and 1987, the World Cup had 8 participants. In 1992, that increased to 9. In 1996 and 1999, that increased to 12. In 2003, that increased to 14. And in 2007, that increased to 16. These increases meant that we got to see the talents of new teams showcased in front of the world stage, perhaps for the very first time. In 1996, we saw the launch of Kenya on the global stage, as they stunned the world in beating the West Indies, prompting Kenya to go on to become the world's best associate member for the next decade. In that same World Cup, we saw the debuts of the Netherlands and the UAE, who are both among the best associate nations now and who owe much of their growth to the World Cup entrance. In 1999, we saw the debut of Bangladesh and Scotland. Bangladesh, who at the time were associates, would go on to beat Pakistan in the group stage, instigating their push for Test status, which ultimately came to fruition only a year later. In 2007, Bermuda and Ireland made their debuts, resulting in iconic scenes as Dwayne Leverock majestically dove to seal one of history's greatest catches. But perhaps more notably, the 2007 World Cup also saw Ireland beat Pakistan in stunning scenes to propel them into the Super 8 stage, where they went on to also beat Bangladesh. Ireland's performance in the 2007 World Cup set off a chain of events that would lead to Kevin O'Brien's match-winning 100 against England in the 2011 World Cup and Ireland's victory over the West Indies in 2015. It remains completely uncontroversial to suggest that Ireland's participation in the 2007 World Cup directly led to the course of events that resulted in their acquisition of Test status in 2017 and their overall success in the wake of the 2007 tournament. It is undeniable, therefore, that the World Cup has historically been an incredibly effective tool in developing and propagating cricket beyond the borders of the best 8 or 10 nations. Yet, since 2011, the ICC have actively acted to restrict participation only to cricket's elite, reducing the participating teams from 16 to 14 in 2011 and 15, and to just 10 in 2019 and the upcoming edition in 2023, the fewest teams since 1992. This is in stark contrast to the ICC's supposed ideals, including their self-professed vision for cricket to become the world's favourite sport, and to grow the sport by creating more opportunities for more people and nations to enjoy it. I don't feel I need to explain how limiting the number of teams at the ICC's flagship event is in direct opposition to their wish to create more opportunities for nations to play the game. Similarly, this is in direct contrast to essentially every other single sports World Cup, where dramatic and consistent expansion takes place regularly, or at the very least, contraction is not even considered. Since 2006, basketball's World Cup has doubled in size. FIFA has attempted to increase from 32 to 48 teams at their World Cup, and as it stands, all of rugby league, rugby union, baseball, netball, hockey and even kabaddi have more teams at their World Cups than cricket does at theirs. The decline of the number of teams at the World Cup from 16 to 14, and particularly from 14 to 10, actively discourages cricketers from emerging nations from pursuing the sport, as the allure of World Cup glory is all but taken away from them. What do players from teams like Scotland and the Netherlands, who are two of the best associate teams in world cricket, have to strive for now. And as such, the results of these decreases in teams have been cataclysmic, with Tim Wigmore reporting that at least half a dozen Scottish cricketers have retired prematurely following the 2015 World Cup. And this all comes despite the fact that cricket has inarguably grown in prominence in its non-traditional centres, and the fact that the ICC have made efforts to grow the game. Between the 2015 and 2019 World Cups, the ICC have made a number of massive decisions that have acted to support emerging cricket nations. Notably, between the last game in the 2015 World Cup and the first game in the 2019 World Cup, the ICC have expanded the number of nations with permanent T20 status from 10 to 105, given Ireland and Afghanistan full membership to the ICC, introduced the Cricket World Cup Super League to ensure the Netherlands and lower-ranked full members would be guaranteed matches against the better sides, and gave the 14th to 20th best one-day nations ODI status. Indeed, year on year, the ICC report increases of over 10% in global participation, which is heavily driven by the associate nations. In fact, the starkness of this can be shown by the fact that the 2019 World Cup was the first World Cup that took place without every single full member. Ireland and Zimbabwe failed to qualify, and the West Indies very nearly missed the World Cup, only being saved by a poor LBW decision that went in their favour at the qualifiers, a tournament without DRS. The West Indies are a team that have won the World Cup twice in their history, but only made the last tournament via luck, really. The qualifying tournament for the last World Cup was so close, in fact, that by the last match, Afghanistan, Zimbabwe or Ireland could qualify, with Afghanistan eventually winning over Ireland in the final over. Yet with it so plainly obvious that essentially every team at the tournament final six were more or less of equal quality, regardless of whether a team was a full member who had previously won 2 World Cups or an associate nation with many semi-professional cricketers in them, only 2 would proceed to the World Cup. Now, this ultimately begs the question, why did the ICC go from having 6 associate members at the 2007 World Cup to leaving out 2 at the World Cup just 12 years later? Well, proponents of the 10-team model would suggest that it would allow for a shorter, more exciting World Cup. But this can be dispelled by the fact that the 2019 World Cup went for 2 days longer than the previous edition that had 4 more teams in it. Nor did the removal of these teams make the tournament more exciting. The top 4 teams in the 2019 edition ended up as essentially the most obvious combination imaginable, with the big 3 of India, England and Australia joined by New Zealand in the finals. The tournament barely had any giant killings and no major upsets as had been present in the last 4 or 5 World Cups. With no associate nations, there were also no teams who desperately needed exposure and no matchups that hadn't or couldn't have been facilitated by a general bilateral series. That is, all except for one special match, India versus Pakistan, and this match signifies why the ICC have acted so strongly to contract the tournament over the last decade. The 2019 World Cup format ensured 2 things beyond a doubt. The first being that India would play Pakistan, a match that was watched by 273 million people. And the second is that India would play at the very least, regardless of how they performed, 9 matches. The Indian market is far and away the ICC's largest TV market, and as such, a format that ensures that India play such an incredible amount of cricket also ensures that the ICC take in an incredible amount of money. The one group round-robin format used in the 2019 edition to facilitate this would be frankly impossible with 14 or 16 teams, and so the 10-team format was chosen. The ICC began to reduce the number of teams in the World Cup following the 2007 edition, where India sensationally lost to Bangladesh and Sri Lanka as they failed to exit their group stage. This was matched by Pakistan, whose loss to Ireland in their second group stage match ensured that they were unable to progress. Whilst Bangladesh beating India and Ireland beating Pakistan have gone down in their respective countries As among the greatest and most pivotal moments in their respective cricket histories, it's also meant that the ICC's two highest earning teams in regard to TV revenue only played 3 matches each. This is when the ICC World Cup essentially exposed itself as not being a tournament when any cricket nation had the chance to fight for glory and was given a chance to showcase their skills in the World Cup, but rather as simply a revenue exercise, one that overwhelmingly relied on the Indian and Pakistan TV markets to succeed, and as such the ICC changed formats to facilitate this. Recent suggestions that the 2027 edition will be increased to 14 teams from 10 are a step in the right direction. However, in that case, the World Cup will still have the amount of teams as it did in 2003, which by then will mean that 24 years of progress in the cricket world will have had absolutely no bearing on the ICC World Cup. In 2003, Ireland and Afghanistan had never even been to a World Cup, and yet we have since seen their cataclysmic rise eventuate before us. Bangladesh have become a very competitive member of the ICC, and Nepal, Papua New Guinea and the Netherlands have improved dramatically in that time, yet all of their efforts will eventually have been for nothing, as the World Cup will be as competitive to qualify for as it has ever been, leaving many worthy aspirants to the wayside. And keep in mind, this is still only conjecture. For all we know, the ICC could come out tomorrow and announce another 10-team World Cup, or a 6-team World Cup, or remove the World Cup altogether for another Border Gavaskar trophy. To the ICC, the World Cup is only a tool for profit, and they will simply use it to that end. At this point, I wonder how long it will take for another associate to upset a full member, which occurred at every single World Cup between 1992 and 2015. The cricket world is bigger than the ICC would like you to believe it is. Associate cricket continues to be left behind by the ICC in its endeavours to contract the World Cup, and at this point, the continuation of a 10-team World Cup is completely farcical.